Hello students, I'm so excited that you're able to join me for another fun and exciting language arts lesson. I am Mr. Jackson and I will be your language arts teacher. Today, we will continue our lessons focusing on writing from the sources. So be sure to have your pencils, notebooks, smart devices, and brains ready as we dive right into this lesson. So we have gone through the steps of writing from the sources. The first being to unpack the prompt or to unpack the assignment. The second step was to code the text evidence or mark up the evidence in the text. The third step was to think about our evidence, and we used the same mean matter chart to help us to think about our evidence. And the fourth step was to organize our evidence, of course using a graphic organizer. Then we plan our writing. So for today's lesson, we'll be focusing on the actual writing in response to the prompt. But how will we know that we are successful? We will know that we are successful if we can do these things. Number one, I can explain the elements of an opinion or persuasive writing. Number two, I can use a graphic organizer to organize the ideas or details from the sources to plan my writing. Number three, I can explain the HDIS strategy. Number four, I can use the HDIS strategy to draft the introduction of my essay or article. Number five, I can draft one body paragraph for my writing piece. And of course, number six, I can participate in this lesson from beginning to end. Now, we know that we're going to be looking at writing the actual piece in response to the prompt, but we first need to understand the elements of an opinion or persuasive writing piece. Now, an opinion or persuasive writing piece must have three main parts. These are the introduction, the body paragraphs, and the conclusion. Within the introduction, it usually consists of a hooking statement or phrase and presents a problem or background information and state a position. Our body paragraph consists of a series of points with backup evidence. Now, these pieces of evidence come straight from our sources. They also show cause and effect. There is use of transitional phrases and other connectives to link ideas within and across the paragraphs. And of course, the conclusion. This begins with a wrap-up statement which restates the beginning position. It summarizes the main points or claims and presents a call to action with an instruction or a catchphrase such as, buy it, love it. Now, it is important for us to organize our details before we begin to write our piece. We can use a graphic organizer or a table to help us to decide how we will structure our ideas, as well as the evidence from the sources that we will use. Now, let us look at an example of a graphic organizer that we could use to help us to organize our ideas. Now, as we can see from this table, it caters to the three parts of whatever we're going to be writing: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. Now, in the introduction, there are four parts that we need to take into consideration. The first being the hook. That is, how will you grab the attention of your readers, or how will you grab your readers' attention? That is one question that you want to consider. What interesting start, what interesting phrase or sentence can you use to grab your readers' attention? The next is the definition. In other words, what is the topic? This is another question that you need to consider. What are you writing about? And of course, you also want to note the importance. Why is this topic important? Why should the readers be interested in reading about this topic? And of course, we also want to talk about the subtopics. This is basically a list of the things that you're going to be writing about within the body of your piece. Now we can see where we have the body. Here we have subtopic 1 and subtopic 2. Now, your piece may have more than 2 subtopics. It could be 3, it could be 4, depending on what the prompt asks you to write. So we have the subtopic and we have our topic sentence. Then we also have the supporting details 1, 2, and 3. Not leaving out the source. So we have to have the evidence from the source as well as the source from which we took that evidence. So we see now we have the source and source number. And the same applies for subtopic 2. We have the subtopic, the topic sentence, the supporting details, and the source number. That is, the source from which we are taking our evidence. Finally, we have now our conclusion. The conclusion is basically bringing all our ideas or thoughts in a nice little package, signaling to the reader that we have come to the end and we have said all that we wanted to say. Now, as it relates to the body of our piece, as we know, we have the introduction, the subtopics, and the conclusion. But let us focus primarily here on the subtopics. The subtopics or subtopic really is what you have to say about the topic, the information that you want to share, whatever it is that you want to say to your reader. In writing your subtopics, you want to use transitional phrases that signals that you are transitioning or moving from one subtopic to the next, from one paragraph to the next, or across paragraphs. It also shows the relationship between the text structure. That is it a compare and contrast? Is it sequencing? And so on. Of course, we want to use the evidence from our sources because that is really what the performance task is about, isn't it? Using evidence from our sources effectively to support whatever it is that we have to say about the topic. In using the evidence from the sources, you also want to refer to the sources. That's right. We need to know where you got your evidence from. So you need to refer to your sources. And of course, you want to vary your sentence structure or sentence types. You could have a declarative sentence, an imperative sentence. You could also have an interrogative sentence, just to ensure that your reader is kept interested in what you have to say. Now we're going to take a closer look at the introduction. In writing our introduction, there are certain things that we need to have. The first thing being the hook, the definition, the importance, and the subtopic. Now, when we talk about the hook, the definition, the importance, and the subtopic, here's what we're talking about. So the hook basically is an interesting start, how you're getting your readers to be interested in what you have to say. The definition is an explanation of your topic, what you're writing about. And of course, the importance. Why is it that your readers need to know about this topic? The subtopic is where you break down for your reader the different areas that relates to the main topic that you're going to be writing about. Let us have a look at an example. In this example, it reads, what could possibly cause children from all over the world to stay home from school for over 1 year? If your guess is the COVID-19 virus pandemic, then you are correct. But what is COVID-19? How is it spread and how can it be prevented? COVID-19 is an illness in humans which is caused by the coronavirus. It is important to learn how the COVID-19 virus is spread and how to protect yourselves from catching the virus, because getting the virus can lead to serious symptoms and even death. This article will explain how the coronavirus is spread and ways to protect yourselves from getting infected. Now let us examine this piece closely. The first sentence is basically a question which reads, what could possibly cause children from all over the world to stay home from school for over 1 year? This is what we would call the hook. This is getting our reader interested in what we have to say. Perhaps the reader may start to think of possible reasons why students will stay home from school for over 1 year. They also will want to read on to see what could possibly be the reason for this happening. Then we have the definition. The definition is basically an explanation of our topic. The definition tells our reader what we are going to be writing about in a broad way. For example, it says, COVID-19 is an illness in humans which is caused by the coronavirus. So from reading, we know that we're going to be writing about, or we're going to be reading about, the COVID-19 virus. Then we continue on to talk about the importance. That is, why is it that our readers need to know about the COVID-19 virus? And so it says it is important to learn how the COVID virus is spread and how to protect yourselves from catching the virus, because getting the virus can lead to serious symptoms and even death. There our readers will want to know and are seeing the importance of the information that you are going to present in this piece. Then the introduction continues. It says, this article will explain how the coronavirus is spread and ways to protect yourselves from being infected. Here we see the subtopics. This is telling our readers the different areas that will be mentioned or discussed or written about within the body of our essay or article. Now I have another example, but this time I want you to read. And as you read, I want you to identify the different parts of the introduction. That is, the hook, the definition, the importance, and the subtopics. So first, we will read as readers, and then we will read as a writer. So let us read as readers. After 2, 1, 2. Quack, quack, quack. That's the sound of a duck, right? Did you know that ducks are omnivore, which means that they feed on aquatic plants, small fish, insects, worms, grubs, and more? Guess you can say that they aren't picky eaters at all. They are also related to swans and geese. Ducks are a part of the wetlands ecosystems because they prevent invasive species of plants and insects from growing out of control. Prepare to find out about what ducks eat, how they find their mate, and how they build their nests. Good. So we've read as readers. Now we are going to read as writers. Quack, quack, quack. That's the sound of a duck, right? Here we have our hook. Naturally, it is an interesting start. We get our reader's attention. This is saying to our reader that we're going to be writing about a duck, instead of telling them that we're writing about a duck. Now the piece continues by also mentioning other bits and pieces of information about the duck. One piece of information that is mentioned says they are also related to swans and geese. Now, this is the definition. So it tells us what we are writing about, which is about the duck. And it continues by telling us the importance of ducks. So it tells us why our reader should be interested in this piece. And it says, ducks are a key part of the wetlands ecosystems because they prevent invasive species of plants and insects from growing out of control. So we see the importance of having ducks around in our wetlands. Then finally it says, prepare to find out about what ducks eat, how they find their mates, and how they build nests, or how they build their nests. This is where we're referring to the subtopics. So our readers know that the rest of the paragraph, or the rest of the body of the essay, will be talking about what ducks eat, how they find their mates, and how they build their nests. All right. So we've dealt with the introduction. We've also dealt with organizing our details and our evidence before we start to write. Now we're going to look at an example of a body paragraph within which we're using evidence from the sources, we're using reference to the sources, and we're also using or transitional words. Are you ready to read? Let's go. So for this piece, we are reading as a reader, and then we're going to read as a writer. And it says, you can catch the virus from an infected person. When an infected person sneezes, coughs, or even breathes and talks, they can send droplets which contain the virus into the air. If you are standing close by, then droplets can get into your nose, eyes, or mouths and infect you with the virus. Another way we might catch the virus is by touching surfaces. The virus can live on surfaces which were either touched by an infected person or contain droplets of fluids from an infected person's nose, mouth, or eyes. If you touch these surfaces with your hands, you can then get the germs into your eyes, nose, or mouth. According to source 1, some very tiny droplets can live in the air for minutes or even hours. This means that if we breathe in the droplets, we can be infected. So we've read as a reader. Now we're going to read as a writer. You can catch the virus from an infected person when an infected person sneezes, coughs, or even breathes and talks. They can send droplets which contain the virus into the air. If you are standing close by, then droplets can get into your nose, eyes, or mouths and infect you with the virus. This is source evidence. In other words, our writer took this information from the source. So in the body of our writing, we need to use evidence from the source. Our writer also uses the word another, which is a transitional word. It signals to us that the writer is moving from one point to the next. There are many other transitional words that you could use. This is just one example. If we continue, we see where the writer says, according to source 1, some tiny droplets can live in the air for minutes or even hours. This is where we have our writer referring to the source, or we refer to this as a reference to the source. So our writer is saying to us where he or she got the information from, where they got their evidence from. They continue to interpret that evidence and put it in their own words by stating, this means that if we breathe in the droplets, we can be infected. So it is important, students, for us not just to cite evidence from the source or just to take information from the source, but to interpret the information that we have and show how it relates to the topic that we are writing about. Let us look at an example. What I want you to do for me now is to read as a reader. After you have read as a reader, you're going to read as a writer. While reading as a writer, you're going to identify the important parts of the information or how you should structure your body paragraph. That is, evidence from the source, use of transitional words, reference to the source, and interpretation of the evidence. Are you ready? Give it a go. Okay, boys and girls, so you've had 1 minute to read the passage, but some of us may just be joining, so let us read together. Remember, we are reading as a reader and then we're going to read as a writer. That's correct. So let's go. One of the most important things to understand about Spider-Man are his powers, due to the fact that he was given his powers by a radioactive spider bite. Many of his powers are similar to those of a spider. One of his powers is strength. According to Source 1, real spiders are stronger than their size. This means that Spider-Man has the same type of strength as a spider. Just like how ants are able to lift objects that are many times their body weight, Spider-Man is also able to lift things that are far greater than him. Source 2 says that it is likely that he can lift over 3 tons. For example, this is about the weight of a full-size car. Spider-Man's amazing strength makes him one of the most powerful superheroes. Now we're going to read as a writer. One of the most important things to understand about Spider-Man are his powers, due to the fact that he was given his powers by a radioactive spider bite. Many of his powers are similar to those of a spider. Now here we see the phrase due to the fact that. This is a transitional phrase that shows the relationship. Now this is showing cause and effect due to the fact that. We also see the word similar, which shows a comparison. If we continue, it says, according to Source 1, real spiders are stronger than their size. Here we are seeing reference to the source. The writer is telling us where he or she got this information from. But he or she also continues to say, this means that Spider-Man has the same type of strength as a spider. Here, the writer is interpreting the information from the source or the source evidence. Remember, students, as writers, it is more than just taking the evidence from the source and putting it in our piece, but we have to interpret the source for our readers to see how the evidence relates to the topic that we are writing about. And it continues. Just like how ants are able to lift objects that are many times their body weight, Spider-Man is also able to lift things that are larger or far larger than himself. Now, here we see the word also, which is another signal word, which is showing a comparison, a compare and contrast. Remember, the signal words can be used to show the transition from one paragraph to the next, or the transition within a paragraph, as well as the text structure of your essay or your article. Source 2 says that it is likely that he can lift over 3 tons. Here we also see evidence from the source, and the writer is also referencing the source, that is to say, where he or she got the evidence from. For example, this is about the weight of a full-size car. Here we see the writer continue to interpret the evidence from the source, showing you how it relates to what he or she is talking about. Spider-Man's amazing strength makes him one of the most powerful superheroes. So this is what the writer has to say about Spider-Man. Are you starting to get it now, students? I'm sure you are. But in case you are not, you can always view this lesson again and again until you get it. Well, it's that time of the lesson to check to see what we have learned so far. Can you do the following things? Number 1, I can explain the elements of an opinion or persuasive writing piece. Number 2, I can use a graphic organizer to organize the details from the source to plan my writing. Number 3, I can explain the HDIS strategy. Number 4, I can use the HDIS strategy to draft the introduction of my essay or article. Number 5, I can draft one body paragraph for my writing piece. And of course, number 6, I can participate in my lesson from beginning to end. Well, if you can do all of these things, then guess what? It's time to have a, you guessed it, 1 minute party. Are you ready to bust out your best dance move? Let's go. 1 minute party, 1 minute party, 1 minute party. Good job, boys and girls. May have not been a minute, but I'm sure you enjoyed it nonetheless. Did you know that this and many other lessons can be accessed virtually on the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information's JAM Learning platform? That's right, this new and exciting virtual learning space is jam-packed with video lessons, learning kits, and many other useful educational resources. Just visit the JAM Learning Resources site or simply click on the link below on your screen, and you will have access to all this and many other information and useful lessons. Well, that's all the time that we have for today's language arts lesson. Be sure to join me next time for another fun and exciting language arts lesson. See you soon.